You probably have to go on the web to learn about Libba Cotton because there's a whole lot that we don't know just from the fact that she was the one who wrote Freight Train and the one who is now celebrated. Is it in Durham or Chapel Hill or one of those? There's this actual big metal statue to her down in her native town where she was born. So
Chapel Hill, I guess.
Chapel Hill, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess. People can Google that at some point later. Don't tell me now, I've made a mistake.
Yeah. So Libba Cotton, who came to work for us in Washington, D.C. as a house cleaner and cook. Would you believe it? You have to go back to those times, Washington, D.C., heavily segregated, everything segregated that was way south of the Mason-Dixon line and also a bit to the north. And I grew up with that. And let me see, from the time I was 10 to about the time I was 18, Libba was in our house every Saturday. And at one point, we found out that she could play the guitar backward without restringing it. Guitar players, try it. Yeah. So Libba Cotton, or Elizabeth Cotton, you really should look her up for more than we can give you tonight.
And Freight Train was one of the defining songs of the skiffle movement. I'm sure you've heard of that DIY movement.
I love it. Good.
And the person who brought Freight Train to the Septic Isle was... Get a grip, girl. Was one Margaret Seeger. Now, Peggy Seeger came to Europe and her brother was recording Libba Cotton for Folkways. But you were ahead of the game. The record hadn't been released at this point.
Well, what happened is I came here. It was one of my stock in trade songs, and I was singing at the Breadbasket in Cleveland Street. Can I tell the whole story? Not probably not the way your mind goes. I sang it, and it was just a little pub, and I loved singing in the little pubs because they were like little living rooms, and they only served coffee and tea. They didn't serve liquor. So there were these two people who came every night, and they only wanted to hear Freight Train. They said, "Would you teach us how to play that and how to sing it?" So I did what folk people do. We share. And that's one of the strongest things about the folk movement is we share. We don't want royalties from what we share with you and with you and with you. So I sat down, I taught them how I played it, I taught them how I sang it. Then I went away to China, as one does. And I came back 3 months later and discovered that they had copyrighted it and recorded it, Charles McDevitt and Nancy Whiskey, and they were collecting royalties from it. And they did so for the next, I think, 5 years before we took them to court and got it back for Libba Cotton. So, but meanwhile, a lot of the royalties had been put into the hands of a neutral person who then neutrally ran off with it. But Libba, it brought Libba a lifetime of being able to live comfortably till she died. So that was Libba Cotton, and she was statuesque, she was gentle, she knew so many songs, and to get her up on stage and hear the stories, oh my God, she was amazing. And she loved it, and it was her time. And my brother Mike was responsible for that. He took her out on the road, and he opened for her, and then said, "Okay, Libba, get up and entertain them." And she did, and she loved it. So, and this was in a country where she had never thought of sitting there with a whole bunch of white people just looking up at her, but thinking, "Oh my God, this is a goddess." It was unless you come from a segregated country at a segregated time, you can't imagine how big that would have been for her. It really was. And she was a wonderful woman.